Jealousy almost never sounds like jealousy. It doesn't show up as anger. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as a question, a casual one, sometimes even one that sounds like care. Oh, that's great. How did that happen? Innocent on the surface. But underneath certain questions, there's a quiet comparison happening, a silent measuring. Nietzsche believed jealousy is what wounded pride looks like when it's trying not to be seen. Today, we're going to break down 5 questions that jealous people ask, almost always without realizing it themselves. And once you learn to hear them, you'll never unhear them again. Question 1. You got lucky, right? The first question shows up right after you share good news. You got the promotion, you launched the project, you hit the goal, and instead of "that's amazing," you get something like, "Oh wow, you got lucky with the timing, huh?" It sounds casual. It's not. Because what that question is actually doing is quietly removing your effort from the story. If your success was luck, then it required no skill, no discipline, no years of work nobody saw. And here's the psychological function this serves for the person asking: if your win was random, then their lack of a similar win isn't really their responsibility either. It's not really about you at all. It's a way of avoiding an uncomfortable question they don't want to ask themselves. Question 2. Are you sure that'll last? The second question wears a disguise. It dresses up as concern. Are you sure this relationship is going to last? Is the business actually sustainable though? Can you really keep this up long term? On the surface, it sounds like someone looking out for you, but notice what it's actually doing. Instead of celebrating where you are right now, it's quietly preloading your future failure. Why would someone do that? Because your stability is uncomfortable for someone who feels stuck. If your progress is temporary, then their lack of progress feels a little less unbearable by comparison. Nietzsche pointed at something most people don't want to admit, that watching someone else succeed can be harder to sit with than facing our own setbacks. Comparison, quietly, is one of the most corrosive forces in the human mind. Question 3. So, how much do you actually make? The third question is the most direct and often the most revealing. Money invites comparison in a way almost nothing else does because it's quantifiable. It turns an abstract feeling, "am I doing well?" into a number you can stack against someone else's. When this question gets asked once, casually, it might just be curiosity. But when it gets asked repeatedly, insistently, pushed past your first deflection, that's not curiosity anymore. That's measurement. Am I ahead of them or behind? And here's what's interesting. The response often tells you everything. If the number is smaller than expected, the topic gets dropped fast. If it's bigger, you might notice a subtle shift, a joke that lands a little sharp, a sudden change of subject, a comment that quietly minimizes what you just shared. Question 4. Aren't you scared of failing? The fourth question sounds like wisdom, like someone protecting you from disappointment. Aren't you worried this won't work out? Isn't that risky? What if it all falls apart? But pay attention to where this question usually comes from. Not from people who've taken big risks themselves, but often from people who never have. Because watching someone else take a leap is uncomfortable when you've spent years convincing yourself you couldn't. Your action becomes a mirror. And the question, disguised as concern, is really doing something else. It's projecting their own fear onto you, hoping you'll absorb it and play it safe too. Nietzsche spent much of his philosophy pointing towards something he called self-overcoming. The courage to keep building yourself even when it's uncomfortable, even when others around you haven't found that courage yet. Jealousy often shows up exactly at the edge of someone else's comfort zone, not because they want you to fail, but because your courage quietly highlights the absence of their own. Question 5, why you though? And the fifth question is the quietest one of all, because it's rarely spoken out loud. Why them? Why not me? This is the question underneath all the others. It's not really about logic or fairness, it's about a feeling, an ache almost, that something has been distributed unfairly, that the universe handed you something it should have handed them. But here's what that feeling conveniently skips over. It compares the outcome without comparing the sacrifice. It sees the finish line. It doesn't see the years of work that happened before anyone was watching. Every visible win has an invisible history behind it. The early mornings nobody saw, the setbacks nobody heard about, the version of you that kept going when it would have been easier to stop. Jealousy, by its nature, skips straight past all of that and lands only on the result. The deeper lesson? Here's what's worth understanding about all 5 of these questions. Jealousy isn't usually about malice. Most people asking these questions don't even realize they're doing it. It's almost always a symptom of something else, a quiet insecurity, an unresolved comparison the person is making with their own life, often without even being consciously aware of it. Someone who feels genuinely aligned with their own path rarely feels threatened by someone else's win. It simply doesn't register as a personal loss, but someone who feels behind, stuck, or uncertain, every visible success near them can start to feel like evidence against themselves. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to excuse disrespect. It just means you start seeing the mask for what it is, how to respond. So, what do you actually do when you recognize one of these questions? A few principles worth holding on to. Don't over explain your success. You don't owe anyone a justification for things going well. Don't shrink your achievements to make someone else more comfortable. Stay calm. Reactivity gives the question more power than it deserves. And if the pattern keeps repeating, it's fair to create some distance. Not out of spite, but self protection. Most of all, keep moving forward. The most effective response to jealousy isn't an argument, it's simply continuing to build, undisturbed. Here's the final thought worth sitting with. If someone in your life keeps asking questions that quietly shrink your wins, doubt your future, or measure your progress against theirs, it might not be a coincidence. It might be a signal that you're moving in a direction they wish they were moving into. Your task was never to make that comfortable for them. Your task is simply to keep becoming who you're capable of becoming, and to let that on its own be enough. If this gave you a moment of clarity about a question someone's asked you, that's exactly what this channel is for. Subscribe to Booked Wisdom, because the more you understand human psychology, the less power other people's discomfort has over your life.